Welcome to Professional Development Day 2011 at Highline Community College. Hey, if you want to download this workbook, Excel 2007-2010 at Work Efficiency and Professional Development Day, you can click on the link below the video. So in this video, this is the description of this professional development today. Many new Excel 2007-10 tricks for making your job easier. So here's the list, and this is going to be a long video. So if you want to jump to certain sections of the video, below the video there's a Show More link. And if you click it, a big long list with the minute marks in this video for all these topics will appear, and you can click on any one of them to jump to them. Now, we're going to do a bunch of new features in 7 and 10, but I'm going to start off, since this is about work and efficiencies, I'm going to start off with 10 tips to start with. All right, let's go over to the sheet called 10 tips. Here's tip number 1. Here's a decimal, and these are all trouble things that people have. They're like the most common trouble points in Excel. So people type a decimal like this, and then in 2007 and 10 they have this ribbon. You come up here and you click on this percentage. Now this is number formatting. Now watch what happens. Boom. And they're immediately freaking out because they're like, ah, that's 5%. Now when I do my taxes, it's not going to be correct. I need 4.5%. So the problem here is that the default for this button, this number formatting, is 0 decimals. So the solution is to increase. And there you can see it's 4.5. All right, at work, tip number 2. Oftentimes people want to type a fraction like 1/2, or in this case we're going to type 2/3. The problem with this is, and in fact, if I click Escape, this will help us understand. Look at the cell before I type anything in it. It's got the general number format. That's the default, right? But when I type 2 divided by 3, I want 2/3 in the cell. Excel is going to interpret this as a date. This is going to be February 3rd. So when I Control Enter just puts the thing in the cell and keeps the cell selected. I can see the date up here, and immediately you can see it has some custom date number formatting applied. So that's never going to work. Now, I'm going to delete what's in the cell. But notice, as soon as we type that date in there, it leaves that number formatting. So if I came here and typed the number 1, what? So the cell has somehow mysteriously become formatted with this custom date number format. The solution to that problem is to simply come up here, and the general number format, that's the one at the top, that will always wipe away any number format like percentage, or in this case, date. All right, now let's do this 2/3. Our goal is to have 2/3. You have to create a formula. So you say equals 2 divided by 3, right? Because I really want the number. I want it to show as a fraction, but I want the number in the cell. So when I Control Enter, oh, that's the decimal. Now that's a good way to convert any fraction to a decimal, right? But that's not what I want. I want to see it as a fraction. So I come up here, again, number formatting, right? 3 times in a row. I come down here, and here's fraction. So there's 2/3. All right, let's skip ahead to awesome trick number 4. If I want to add these up, we could come up to the Sum button up here, but there's a keyboard shortcut. Of the 400 functions, Sum is the only one cool enough to have a keyboard shortcut. It's Alt equals. So I'm going to click in the cell and Alt equals. All right, so that's pretty cool. Control Enter. Uh-oh. 2 plus 2 equals 3? What's going on here? Well, here's the thing. Trick number 3 is, let's say you've had this data imported from some database or downloaded, or it's from someone else's spreadsheet. Well, you always have to be suspicious of data from other people's spreadsheets. And the problem here, it goes back to number formatting. These decimals are, there's no decimal showing. So if you come up here and increase the decimals, you could see that the numbers in the cell, 1.55 and 1.5, are always going to be there regardless of how many decimals are showing. It looks like these are rounded, but they're not. That's why the sum function, looking underneath, sees the 1.5 and the 1.55 and adds them and rounds it to 3. Now, it's not rounding because those numbers are always there. Look up in the formula bar. You can see, oh, That's what's really in the cell. This is number formatting, is like a facade or a Halloween mask or paint on the outside of your house. So this is not what's in the cell, it's what we see. And there's a disconnect between the two. So simply increase the decimals, and then you can see the correct numbers. All right, trick number 5. And actually, I think I have this backwards. I should have, when you download this, it'll be correct. So here we have an end date, and actually I'm going to change this to the 19th. Here's a begin date and an end date. Imagine this is the due date for an invoice, and this is today. So we need to calculate the number of days between them to figure out how many days the invoice is late. Or here's the beginning of the project. Here's the end of the project. In the classroom, here's the date the assignment was due. Here's when it was turned in. In all cases, we need to calculate the number of days between two dates. In Excel, it's easy. You always say equals, it's a formula, the later date minus the earlier date, or the end date minus the begin date. I wrote that over here. And that tells you 8. Now, why is that true? Well, there's a common theme here. This is all about number formatting. If you come over here, you can see dates have a date number format. And we saw that when we typed in 2/3, it gave us February 3rd. But underneath, there is the number of days, whole number, since December 13th, 1899. So that means anytime you type 1/1/1900, that's 1. 1/2/1900, that's 2. 10/11/2011, it's 40,827 days. That's why we can do date math, right? That's why we're allowed to subtract these. Now, remember we talked just a moment ago about general number formatting. Right here it says date. If you come up here and apply general, which you would never want to do with dates, but just to see what's going on here, you click on that. That's why we're allowed to do date math. Now, I'm going to immediately undo because I don't want that there. Either this button or the keyboard shortcut for undo is Control-Z. All right. Similarly, there's time. And this is even more troublesome for people than dates. The way you get hours, if you want time worked as an integer, you have to take the later date minus the earlier date, or the end time minus the begin time. Notice with a date, it's end date minus begin date, or later minus earlier. Same with time. The only problem with time is you have to multiply it by 24. Now, the reason why that's true, and I'll scroll over here before I even do it, is time. Again, it's a number formatting, time number formatting. But underneath is a number between 1 and 0 that represents a proportion of one 24-hour day. For example, 6 hours worked out of a 24-hour day gives you 0.25. So if that's what Excel gives you, 0.25 multiplied by 24 gives you 8. All right, so that's how you do time math. Equals, and I'm going to do, in parentheses, the later time minus the earlier time. Close parentheses. Now I want to enter this and see what happens. That's number formatting. Another thing about Excel is cell references always suck the number formatting from the cell inputs. So we see 6 a.m. and people get sometimes make the mistakes thinking, oh, that's supposed to be 6 hours. But let's wipe away the number formatting. We know that trick. We go up to general. There's the 0.25. All right. So now, once you know that, that is what Excel's doing underneath the number formatting. You simply multiply it by 24. And that's our 6 hours worked. All right, so trick number 7, we've already talked about it. Here's every single one of these problems. We had the 5%, which is actually 4.5. These numbers, which are actually 1.55. And all of these are dates, these are times. When you enter a date or a time, and time you always have to say hour, colon, minute, space, AM, or PM. These all have a number formatting. So just to show you how important this is, if you really want to see what's going on, apply general. So I come down up here to general, and boom. Instantly you can see. So this means there's always going to be a disconnect between what's in the cell and the number formatting that you see on top. I'm going to undo that. Leave that like that. All right. Trick number 8, if you ever have data that you need to enter in more than one column. So I need to enter some data like this and like this. How about highlighting in advance? If I were to go 2, 2, 5, 6, enter, and then I have to click back up here, I don't want to do that. I want to just hit numbers and enter. Well, as soon as you highlight some cells, that active cell, you can type 2, 2. I'm hitting enter, 5, enter, 6, enter, and it will jump back to the top. And when you get to the last one, if you hit enter, it jumps back. Now, here's trick number 9. You never want to do this with your formulas. 100 times 0.095. All right, so I've hard-coded a tax number here. And the reason why is if you have a template, if someone ever comes here and intends to change the tax rate to 0.10, our formula doesn't update. So the rule for formulas is if a number can change, you put it into a cell and refer to it with the cell reference. So that would be the correct formula. Now, if this changes to 0.1, the formula updates. All right, trick number 10. This is a trick about copying formulas with cell references. All right, so here's a typical grade sheet. Equals, and you have your student score, and you divide it by the total possible. That's going to give us the decimal, right? Notice the blue one is there, and the green one is C37. When I hit enter, I do it again. I say cell directly to my left divided by C37 equals one cell to my left divided by C37. So the pattern is I'm always going one cell to my left divided by the same cell reference every time. So the way you do that is you build a formula, equals, and you click on the cell reference directly to your left. Now, this is a relative cell reference. If you copy a formula down with the cell reference, those dancing ants will move relative to the formula. Divided by. But if you want a cell reference not to move, you need to lock it. Now, the concept here is as I copy this formula, I don't want to have to create individual formulas. I want to create one formula. So you enter the cell reference that can move. No problem. You get to this one, and you want it locked. Well, these look the same. There's a C and a number, a C and a number. But here's the magic trick. To convert this to a locked cell reference, you hit the F4 key, and it puts the secret code $signs in. Now, those $signs means it's locked. As you copy it down, the cell reference will not move. Let's see what we mean. Now, I want to copy this formula, and once I enter that in, I move my cursor to the corner, and that thing right there is called a fill handle. This cursor, that's the selection cursor, but that cursor changes to a crosshair or an angry rabbit. Then you're allowed to click and drag all the way down. Now you come to the last cell, and I want to put it in edit mode, so I'm going to use F2. And notice how incredible that is. I didn't have to create these individually. This cell reference was left. As we click on it, it doesn't have any $signs. So when we copy it down, it moves, always looking one to my left. And then this one is locked on C37. This is called a relative cell reference. This is called an absolute or a locked cell reference. All right, trick number 11. How do you sort? A lot of times people come and sort. So I want to sort this whole table here. So this is for part of a grading table. This number goes with this. This number goes with this. This number goes with this. If I want to sort this, this would be an absolute deadly move. Now, sorting is in a number place. It's on the home ribbon over here. It's on the data ribbon, A to Z and Z to A. So you never want to sort like this, because if you do, and I want the smallest one on top. Luckily, since about Excel 2002 or something, there's this warning message. It says, what do you want to do, expand the selection or continue with the current selection? If you do sorting that way, it'll sort just these, and it will wreck the data set. So I'm going to click Cancel. The trick for sorting is that you select a single cell in the data set. Field names are at top. Each one of these is called a record. They go together. You select the column you want to sort, a single cell, and then click your A to Z. Boop. and it works perfectly. Now these all retain their original position, but everything in the table is sorted. Now let's go look at our 12th example. Now this is the little table we did just a little bit ago, relative, absolute, or locked cell references. We have our decimal. We could easily format that as percentage. We saw that as the first trick up at the top of this spreadsheet here. But what we want to do here in trick number 12 here is calculate the decimal grade. Now, most of us know how to do this by hand, right? We have some table in our syllabus like this, and we look this number up. Now, the VLOOKUP function, people think this is hard to do. It's not. And here's the trick. If we do it once or twice by hand, meaning how we would do it just without help of a function, and look at the mechanics of how we look something up, then when we get to our function, we'll relate that to how the function's set up, and then it will make perfect sense. Now, the one little tricky thing is most people in their syllabus will have listed at the top 95% is 4. 0.94 is 3.9. Now, the VLOOKUP function that we're going to use can't handle it this way. It's got to be smallest number at the top all the way to biggest. No problem. We just learned how to sort, right? Field names at the top, records in rows, select a single cell. Now, we saw how to use the data ribbon, but there's a right-click feature in 2007 and 10. So I'm going to go to A to Z. Remember, the key was select one cell in the column you want to sort. Now, let's do this manually. And here's how you do it. You'd take this 0.812. You put that in your brain, right? And remember, OK, 812. I go over to the table. And within the table, I look up in the first column. Well, what do? I literally go down, down, down. And I'm looking up 812. And I look until I see the first number that's bigger than 812. That means I'm not allowed to go past here. And I jump back one row. OK, so this is the row. Then I jump over to the second column of this table. I take that 2.6 in my memory. And then I come over here and I type it 2.6. Similarly, I do like this. 604, so I come 604. Oh, look at that. So I bump into this. This is 6.2. That number's smaller, so I jump back here and I put a 0. This 0.956, I go racing down the column. Oh, there isn't anything bigger than what was it, 0.56. There's nothing bigger than it. So this is the row right here. I get this 4. I come back and deliver a 4. All right, so that's a hassle at grading time. No problem. There's a function that can do this. Ready? Equal sign and then VL. Now, a great feature came in 2007, this drop-down list, right? When you hit V, it tells you all the V functions, right? VL, and there's nothing but VLOOKUP. That's what we want. Another great feature in 7 and 10 is it gives you a description. So under the V's, you could go and click on each one of these, and it gives you a different description, right? And it tells you that this is a VLOOKUP function. It'll do the VLOOKUPing for you. Now, once the function is blue, you can either double-click it or hit Tab. Now, here's the cool thing. The screen tip, this is called a screen tip. It kind of prompts you and reminds you. Now, the lookup value, that's the thing that we put in our brain when we're doing it manual, because you got to tell the VLOOKUP function, hey, what's the thing you want to look up? What's the number? All right? Screen tip has bold. In order to get to the next screen tip, you have to type a comma. So I'm going to type comma. Table. Oh, yeah. If you're going to do VLOOKUP, you got to give it a table that has all the numbers, both first column for the lookup value and second column with a thing to return back to the cell. So you highlight the whole table. Now, I'm going to highlight the first 2 cells and use the keyboard shortcut Control-Shift down arrow. That jumps to the bottom of the table. Now, notice when we copy this formula down, the VLOOKUP needs to look at each individual student's score, but that table needs to be locked. So what do? We hit the F4 key to put the secret $ signs in. That means it's locked. Now I'm going to type a comma. Column index just says, hey, if I'm looking something up in the first column, which column has the number you want to bring back to this cell? Because remember, VLOOKUP, this formula and the function VLOOKUP, its job is to dump something in the cell, and that something is the decimal. Well, the decimal is in the second column, so you type a 2 to say get the thing from the second column. Now, comma, approximate or exact. We're doing approximate match, and the reason why is we could have partial numbers. So we could get 0.655. And so there's a gap in between numbers. There's some numbers that could fit in here. That's why the analogy of going down the table and bumping into the first number that is bigger and jumping back one row works. All right? Approximate match is what we want. If you're using exact match, that means you'd be like looking up words or something. Now, this true or approximate match is the default setting, so you don't even have to put it in. You can leave it blank, and VLOOKUP knows. That's also why those square brackets there, if you see that in a screen tip, it means that argument is not required, and it will still work. But you better know what the default is if you don't put it in. And we do. It's approximate match. Close parentheses. Now I'm going to Control-Enter and enter this in. Now I can click with my angry rabbit and drag down, and that shows us, oh, just as we did by hand. Oh, bummer. Okay. Oh, man. I did a terrible job of teaching if there's that many zeros. I'm going to undo that, or Control-Z, because I want to show you a different way to copy a formula down a column. Now notice there's stuff next to this this formula. When I copy it down, there's stuff all the way here. And I stop right when there's a blank there. Well, if you double click this fill handle, instead of clicking and dragging, if you double click, it copies it down all the way to the bottom, and it knows to stop right there because there's a blank there. If you put this in edit mode F2, you can see the formula worked perfectly. It's looking at the right student decimal there, and it's still got the table locked. Wow. That's enough just for one professional development day. But that's just the 12 little office tips. Now, we did see a couple things new and cool about 7 and 10. All right, our next tab, we're going to go to tables. I just want to show you something really cool. Most of the next tips will be pretty quick here. There's something called the table feature. And imagine that we Alt equals to get the sum function, and then we redirect it with our cursor here, and our goal is to add. But here's the deal. I keep adding new records each day, and I want this to automatically update. OK. I'm going to click Escape. I'm not going to put my formula in yet. If you convert this to what's called an Excel table, it'll automatically have dynamic ranges, and any formula pointing to a column in a table will automatically update as you add new records. Now, the trick is you have to have a proper data set. Just like a second ago when we sorted, you had field names at the top, records in rows. If that's the case, click in any one cell. You could go up to Insert Table or Control-T. It says my table has headers. When you have tables, they should always have, I always like to add some different formatting to the top here. So there's no doubt. In the old days, Excel actually would look, and if there was some formatting difference, it would know those were field names. Click OK. There it is. It does a bunch of cool things. All the ranges that we use from now on will be dynamic. It actually now has an automatic drop-down that can sort, even sort by color. It has filters, a bunch of filters here. Click Cancel, automatic filters. We'll talk about those in just a moment. All we want to see is that the sum function. And I'm going to do two versions. Now, I'm going to kind of cheat here a bit. I'm going to look that this is B6 to B9 because I want to illustrate something. So I'm going to say B6 colon B9. That is not a good way to enter cell references, but I'm doing it for a specific reason because I want to show you that that B9 will turn to B10 when we add new records. Now, here's what you get if you just highlight the range. And some people don't like this. Other people do. Sum, and watch this when I highlight the range. Oh, This is called table formula nomenclature. This came in 2007. That means the name of the table is table 1, and that's an automatic name. But notice the field name at the top comes in square brackets, and it has calls per day. So some people like this because, boom, you know exactly what it is. But watch. Both of them will update. So when I come down here, just at the bottom, it will know to expand. But I'm going to type 10/15/2011 tab. Notice when I hit tab, it automatically entered. Watch this, 50, and I should get something like 180, 190, right? Is that amazing? Look up here. The B9 changed to B10. This one just stays the same. I absolutely love it. This will be 10/16/2011. And I'm going to, one call. All right. So then it adds up. Totally amazing. New feature in 7 and 10. Let's go to the next sheet, conditional formatting. Another awesome addition was some built-in conditional formatting. Now I'm going to highlight this and show you what do those mean. That means there's a railroad track, right? No. That means there's a fence that it's been put up and that you can't see it. It actually means the column is not wide enough. So if you double click up here, that won't work. It best fit to that width. So I'm just going to click and drag like that. And then I can double click here. Double click. All right, let's do a couple different things. Conditional formatting has been around for a long time, but they have a bunch of new features. So here, home ribbon, style, conditional formatting, right? There's a bunch of new built-in ones, greater than, less than, equal to, text, date containing duplicate values, right? Top and bottom rules, top 10, top 10%, bottom 10, above average. Got to be kidding. In earlier versions before 2007, this was really hard to do. But let's just say above average. And no way. Look at that. Behind the scenes, it's calculating the average. It knows what it is, and it simply highlights them. I'm going to click this drop-down, and you can go to custom, because the built-in ones aren't very nice. And you can do whatever fill you want. That's the color in the cell. Font, I would do a light-colored font, whatever. Even number formatting. I'm going to click OK, and then click OK. So there it is. And it's dynamic. If I type 1 here, then that one is no longer conditionally formatted. All right, let's look at another conditional formatting. Let's highlight this, and let's say you'd like a indication of which one's the biggest with a bar. So this one's the tallest. So it's as if we could have a cell chart showing a column, or not a column, I'm sorry, a bar. And the biggest bar would indicate the biggest number. Smallest would indicate the smallest number. Highlight all the cells, and simply there's some amazing built-in feature, data bars. And there it is. You can do the kind of translucent ones or the solid ones. And this is dynamic. If I change this to 1, it absolutely changes. Here's another one for dates. You highlight the dates, and you come over here. You probably wouldn't do 2 different conditional formattings in one data set like this. But let's just take a look here. I don't think I have a good example here, but these dates, date occurring. Now, we're not going to invoke this because this is actual raw data. But look at this. You could say, show me last week, which it's showing me there's only 1 from last week. Next week, that would show me next week. That would be for like a schedule, right? And these are last month, this month, next month, today. So I could show today, and that would show me what today's date is. Those date formats are context sensitive. So as the dates change, like when we come in tomorrow, it'll highlight this one. All right, so there's 1, 2, 3 conditional formattings. Here's one more. How about duplicates? We have some duplicate records here. And I want to go to conditional formatting, highlight, and duplicates. And then you could change it if you want. Click OK, and there's some duplicates. Still further, you could do something silly like icon sets, right? They indicate there's 3 categories here, right? Here there's 5 categories from biggest to smallest. All right, let's go over to our next sheet. I'm going to go to the Filter 1 sheet, and we want to talk about filter. Now, we're going to look at filtering. And what filter does is we're going to say something like, hey, please show me only Sue's records. And it will hide everyone else's records. And I do want to compare and contrast filter to sort. right? Let's try it with sort first. How would we get all of Sue's records together? Well, just as we saw earlier in the video, field names at the top, records in rows. I click in one cell. The column I want to sort is name, so I right-click, sort, and I'm going to say Z to A. Right? There's Sue's records. So if I was interested in them, I might Control-C and then paste them somewhere else. Now, for a large data set, with hundreds or thousands of records, to find the Sue's records and highlight them and copy them might be a little bit difficult. Let's look at filter. Just like sort, before we filter, you have to click in one cell. Now, this has to be a proper data set. Field names at top, records in rows. Right? Click in a single cell anywhere in the table because we have to turn the filter on. I'm going to go up to the data ribbon, and there's the filter button. Control-Shift-L is the keyboard shortcut. And it's a toggle. You can toggle it off and on. All right? Now let's just go ahead and look at this drop down. There it is. We can choose unselect all and select Sue. What's nice about this is then you could simply, everything that's not Sue is hidden. Actually, you can tell it's hiding because there's blue there. That means it's filter. And you can see it goes from 8 to 13. Then you simply highlight the table. Now, if it's a big table, you click in one cell and Control asterisk and use the asterisk on the number pad. Control asterisk. That highlights the whole table. Control-C. And then you can paste it down here. So that method of filtering to get to your data and copying and pasting is really nice. Now I'm going to unfilter that little icon right there, and it unfilters it. Clear. I'm going to click Escape to get rid of the dancing ants. Now the nice thing about Filter in 2007-10 is they added all these amazing new features. Text filters. You can say equals and then type in something. Does not equal begins with. So ends with contains. If you had addresses and you want to look everything up on Birch Street, you could say contains and then type in Birch, and it would filter and show just the addresses on Birch. I'm going to click Cancel. All right, so text filters is a bunch of awesome ones built in. Number filters. Now, you can select, but this is the more interesting one. Just like with conditional formatting, you can say equals, does not equal, greater than, less than, etc. Top 10, I love this, above average. All right, so I'm going to click above average, and it filters them out. You copy and paste and put it somewhere else. Now I'm going to turn this filter off. Clear filter, and there we have it. OK, so let's go over to this next sheet, Filter 2, and look at a couple more filters. All right, so here I want to filter, and I'm going to come down to this numbers. And I'm going to say top 10. Now that top 10 it was in conditional formatting also. And just like over there, you don't have to have top 10. You can say top whatever. I want the top 3. Let's say 4. And then click OK. We got our data set all the stuff we're not interested in hidden. We copy and then paste it wherever we want. Don't paste it next to it because there's a bunch of rows that are hidden. Now I'm going to turn this off. Clear. The other amazing thing in 2000, I'm going to click Escape to turn the dancing ants off. Another amazing thing in 2007 and 10, this drop down right here, date filters. Just like with conditional formatting, they have just some profound built-in features. Next week, this week, last week, next month, this month, last month. So if you have huge data sets and you want to look at just even last quarter, there it is. I'm going to say this week. And there it is. Those are only the records this week. All right, I'm going to clear. Actually, if you click this, you can clear it. But if you want to turn them off and see all the records again, you simply click the filter button. All right, let's go over. And in 2007 and 10, there's a great new function. I'm going to click on the SUMIFS. Here's a data set. And what we want to do is summarize. We have some records. Here's Sue's records. And I want to add, for Sue, I want to add just Sue's numbers. For Joe, I want to add just Joe's records. Now, in the old days, we used to use SUMIF equals SUMIF. Now SUMIF was a little bit confusing. The screen tip sometimes confused people and they entered the arguments incorrectly. But we have this great new function, SUMIFS. Now, SUMIFS is fine, but it only does one criteria, whereas SUMIFS with an S, this came in 2007, you can have one or more criteria. And what's nice about this, if you have just one criteria like we do here, they named the arguments really smartly so it's easy to enter reading from the screen tip. Sum range, what are the numbers I want to add? Those. I'm going to have to hit the F4 key to lock it. Comma, well, what's the criteria range? I want to add just for Sue, so I'm going to highlight all of the employee column. Notice it's the exact same size as the numbers, F4. That's the criteria range, comma, and the criteria Sue. That's a relative cell reference. Close parentheses. Now this function, what it technically will do is it looks through this column. Every time it sees a Sue, it says true. It jumps over here. It gets it. It adds it. False, 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 false. True, it adds that one. True, it adds that one. All right? Control Enter. And now I'm going to do that trick. Double click and send it down. So SUMIF. There's all of the sales added for Joe. Now what if you have two criteria? I want to add, but I want to add, look through this column, look through this column, find Sue, find all the numbers for Sue, but only add the ones greater than 80. All right? This is where the SUMIFS is absolutely awesome. This was hard to do in earlier versions before 2007. Sum range, F4, comma, criteria range 1. Ah, right. We're going to have two criteria ranges. Well, the first one is the name, so I highlight the name, hit F4, comma, the criteria, Sue, relative cell reference, comma, and what's the criteria range 2? Well, it's the numbers. Got to hit F4 to lock it, comma, and what is the criteria 2? Well, I can't quite get it to take my mouse and point at it, so I'm going to click in that cell and down arrow. Actually, there's a bunch of other ways I could have typed it in, and I could have actually just used my arrows there too. But I got the F9. Now, that's the last criteria. I close parentheses and Control Enter. So 0, because Sue had nothing greater than 80. So I'm going to double click and send this down. It's all not correct. I must have not done something correct. Oh, here's where it pays to go to the last cell and hit the F2 key and look. Notice this says F13. It should be looking at F9. So I'm going to click Escape. I'm going to come to the top cell, F2, and I forgot to lock this. So with my cursor, when I come back in edit mode, I have to touch the cell reference somewhere with my cursor in F4. Control Enter. Double click and send it down. All right, so it's looking at two criteria. Counting is the similar thing, except for instead of SUMIFS, we use COUNTIFS with an S. Criteria range 1, it's this range right here, F4, comma, and watch this. Now I'm going to use my arrow key smartly. Since my formula is in this cell and the cell reference is one cell to the left, I'm going to use my left arrow. When you're in creating a formula like this, your arrow keys go to hunt for cell references. Comma, criteria range 2 is this. F4, comma, and now I'm going to use my right arrow key to get F16. And now I'm going to hit F4. I'm not going to forget this time. That one's got to be relative because as we copy the formula down, it's moving. Control Enter, double click and send it down. All right. The PT sheet. So I'm going to click on the sheet named PT for pivot table. Now, pivot tables are kind of like VLOOKUP function in that people think they're hard. But if you look at it from a slightly different angle, it's quite easy. Here's a data set. Names, gender, high school, major, and grade. So I'll say this is at Highline Community College. And our goal is to build a little table with high school, the high school they came from, the major, and then calculate for business majors in Auburn the average. Well, what would you have to do? You'd have to look through the whole table and find any record that has Auburn in business. So Auburn business, Auburn business, Auburn business. Get all those numbers and calculate the average. But to do it for a whole table would be quite difficult. Now, here's what makes pivot tables easy. If you can picture this table in your mind, meaning the high school are the row labels, right? Because this is a row, and a row label is at the head of the row label. Row, head of the row label. And these are column labels, right? Here's all the accounting. Here's all the business. It means at the top of each column is the name. The intersection of the two is where we do the calculations. If you can see this in your head, row labels, column labels, and all the intersecting cells are the values areas, that's where we do the calculation, then you already know how to do a pivot table. All right, let's go over. Just remember, high school is going to be row labels. Major, this column right here, is going to be column labels. Now, as always, we've done sorting and filtering. You've got to have field names at the top, records in row. It's got to be a proper data set like this. Now, I'm going to click in one cell, just like we did with sorting and filtering. I'm going to go up to Insert and Pivot Table, Pivot Table. All right? If you have your data set up correctly, and by the way, nothing, you never have anything touching the data set for sorting, filtering, or pivot tables. There's a blank all the way around, or letters or numbers over here are fine. It gets the data set. We want it in a new worksheet. I'm going to click OK. Now check this out. There's first off a picture here. Notice we have the row headers and the column headers. Over here, it says row labels, column labels, values. And here are our fields. So all you have to do is if you want high school in the row label, you drag it there. Whoa. If you want major in the column label, you drag it there. Amazing. Now notice they also give you a little visual cue right here. The yellow means these are column headers. The yellow there means these are row headers. And then if you want to do some calculation, that means whatever field we're doing a calculation upon, we drag it to the values. Now by default, it shows adding, but that's easy to change. Now I have some notes over here of what we're going to do. And I'm going to double click the sheet and call it PT Solution for SOL. Now the first thing is it doesn't say high school and major. It says row labels and column labels. That is a default they changed in 2007, and it's annoying. So you just always have to remember to go up to Design, Report Layout, Show in Tabular. I wish that was the default. I have no idea how to set it as a default either. There it is, high school major. Right? So that's number one. Number two, we want to change the calculation. You could see it says sum of grade. The trick for pivot tables is you go to where you want to do something and right-click it. Now, there's options up in these ribbons, and you have to do that report layout. But most of the things, if you want to do something, you just right-click it. So I'm going to right-click. And this is new in 7 and 10. They have summarized values, which have functions, and then more functions there. And then this is an amazing one. If you ever want a running total, like you have daily numbers and you have dates down the side, percentage running total in, that's new in 2010. A bunch of amazing features. But we're not going to do anything that complicated. We just want, average. We don't want to see all these decimals, so what's our trick? We're going to right-click. And what do we really want here? We want to add some number formatting to change it so we only see 1 or 2 decimals. Right-click, number format. I'm going to go down to number, and I'm going to select 2. It's by default. All right, that is pretty amazing. Just like that, you have your table. Now, pivot tables are really easy if you can visualize it that way. Now, there are some new functions and features that are usually advanced, but there's one absolutely amazing thing in 2010. It's called a PivotTable Slicer. But first, we want to talk about the report filter. Now, what if you wanted 2 different tables? You wanted this table for men and this table for women. You'd take the gender, and since we want 2 different tables, in essence, we want to filter the whole table, you drag it to Report Filter. Now it pops up here and it says all. You click it and then you select one of them. So I'm going to select M, and boom, there it is for M. You print it out. You click up here for W and print it out. Now let's see an improvement. I'm going to drag this away, and that's how if you make a mistake, you can drag anything, right? So I dragged major back, and then there's the grade point average for each high school district. Now, that's an example of why it's called a pivot table, because it's so easy to change it. I'm going to drag major back to the columns, all right? And there's this great new feature, and you come up to, I don't think we can right-click. It doesn't have slicer here. You gotta, by the way, if you click outside of the pivot table, oh no, what happened to my field? You got to click back in there, and there it is. But here we're going to go up to Options, and there it is, Insert Slicer. Insert Slicer. And it gives you an example. All it's going to do is do that report filter, but with a beautiful user interface. So I'm going to say gender. And it comes like this, and you can resize it. And the cool thing is when you have big pivot tables and you have lots of these, right? You can add a different color if you want, right? And now you simply click on the M and it shows you. Click on the W and it shows you. So that's called a slicer. Now, let's see if we drag major over here and then click on the pivot table. By the way, I'm going to close this using this little X. Anytime you want, you right-click and it says Show Field List. But I'm going to go to Insert, Slicer. And now I'm going to choose a major. So this is where slicers really come in handy. So then you're like down here, and you're saying, I want to see chemistry, computer science, English. And if there aren't any, it doesn't show you. That's absolutely amazing. If you want accounting and business and chemistry all in a row, you hold Shift and then click on the last one. Again, Shift and click on the last one. If you want math and accounting, totally two different things. Math, you actually add numbers. Accounting, you actually obfuscate numbers and make up categories to confuse people, right? So you hold Control to get two categories not next to each other. I know, I wish they'd made that easier. So I'm going to hold Control, and there you go. So you see all the accounting and math for women and then for men. So those are slicers. Totally awesome, new in 2010. All right, another new feature, Sparklines. I'm going to click on this sheet called Sparklines. Now, Sparklines are cell charts. A guy named Edward Tufte invented these. And they're not like real charts where you have proper labels and whatnot. You just want a little visual, right? Just a little visual in the cell. Originally, the way he thought of them is it would be a little picture in a line of text. But here, we're in Excel, so you put it into a little cell here. Now, these are average quizzes. We have lots of quizzes over here, but these are the kind of the summarized data. These are the averages over the semester. So I'm going to click here and insert a sparkline. Insert sparkline line. I highlight the numbers. Click OK. There it is. You can change the color if you want. You could say high point, low point. Change the color. High point. We'll make it green. Low point, we'll make it red, right? So kind of a nice little visual, right, for the semester. Upward trend, something bad happened here. And then it skyrocketed up. Ooh, that's pretty bad. All right, you could also do it with column. Insert. This is the same data. Sorry, Sparklines, column. We highlight the numbers. Same thing, high point, low point. You could change the colors if you like. Change the color, and it'll change the whole column. So I'll change it to green. And then the low one to red. I don't think it'll show up. Oh, there it is a little bit. All right, and then finally here we have summary. So this is a summary giving me the frequency. Here's the category. So the possibility for quizzes were always 0 to 20, and all of the data is over here. right? So you have to build some little summary like this. Actually, you could do Sparklines on the actual data, right? So this is quiz 1. But then there'd be so many little columns or lines that it might be hard to see. But you could do it by quiz, too. I have mostly summarized data over here. All right, so I'm just going to do frequency. So I'll do columns. Insert Sparkline columns. OK, Sparklines, totally amazing. Just little short cell charts. Paste special. Got to look at paste special. Now, many people maybe didn't use paste special in the past, mostly because it was pretty darn hidden. But let's look at copying this table and what paste special means. Now, in 2010, this great live preview came. So I'm going to copy this table here. I'm going to click in this cell. And the live preview, you come up to the paste special dropdown. And if you click this, that means paste everything. If this one, it pastes just formulas. Now, we don't have any formulas. It's all data. Here, it's formulas and number formatting. So those aren't very useful. But this, no borders. This one's column widths. This one is transpose. Isn't that cool? This is paste values. And we'll see an example of that in just a moment. And there's some other ones, including pasting a picture and a picture that's linked. Now, I'm actually going to do this transposed one. Now, maybe I'll do this one. Oh, it's still, the dancing ants are still going. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to paste a picture. I do this all the time when I'm going from Excel to my Word syllabus, for example. I have my grade table. I paste, these same things exist in Word. I paste the picture. If you want it linked, which means if you change anything in Excel, it will update wherever the picture is, you use this one. This is an actual picture, and it's linked. If I were to change this to 2, this picture changes, right? So those are great paste special. Now, there's also a whole bunch of new Control keyboard shortcuts. If you copy and Control V, which is paste, this Control keyboard, you can either access it by drop down, and it's got the same little icons, or you can hit Control. So it's Control V. Those are holding those keys together. And then tap Control. It opens up. And if you know T is for transpose, you hit T. One last thing about paste special. Paste special is very useful because a lot of times you have some total, and it's a formula that's creating that total. So you Control C, and then you want this total up here, so you Control V. Well, it's going to give you a reference error because this formula is built with relative cell references, and when you paste it here, there's not that many cells above it, so it gives you a reference error. So what you want to do is copy, click here, come up, and paste values. It converts the formula to values. One other cool thing is if you copy, you can come up here, Control V, and then Control, and the paste special right there is V, so you hit Control and then V. One other key for cool trick for you keyboard junkies, Control C, come up here, and there's a right click key on your keyboard. It's in between the Alt and Window key and Control. It's got a little picture of like right clicking. But if you hit that right click key and V for paste special values, that's the fastest way to paste special values. So right clicking, there's a little icon that looks like a little teeny menu, and your cursor's pointing to it. That's the right click key. So in super fast motion, it's Control C. I click here, right click V, and that is paste special. That's all new in 2010. Print, we got a couple more topics here. Print. In the old days, what happened? We Control P and then hit Enter, right? Clicked OK. And then the thing printed out across many pages. It wasn't how we wanted. So what they did is now when you go up to either File, Print, I don't even know where it is. It's Control P. If you Control P, look what they did. They whoops, I hit Alt. Control P. They combined the Print dialog box and Print Preview. So if you're paying attention, you can see that some of the numbers are cut off. You also can see page 1 of 2 down here. This is just a huge improvement. So I'm going to click Escape. Now that I've done that, it warned me. I'm going to go up to Page Layout and do whatever page setup I want. I'm going to use this. I'm going to say Landscape and change whatever page setup I want. Because now when I Control P, I can look, and that print preview has changed. If you know the old keyboard shortcuts for preview, I think it was Control F2. Let's see, Control F2. That doesn't even work anymore. It's the same as Control P. So combining print preview and the print dialog box, totally awesome. So there's going to be fewer trees wasted, because we'll see the mistake when the print dialog box and print preview opens and not print. Go and fix it first. One last thing, rank. Whoops, I have the answers here. In earlier version, we have some numbers, and we want to rank from 1st to 30th or whatever it is. So we use RANK. And here's an important tip about 2010. They added a bunch of new functions to replace earlier functions. That little picture right there, that little warning triangle, is called a compatibility function. They don't want you to use it. If you click here, this function is available for compatibility with 2007 or earlier. And then it tells you what it does. The new function they want is rank equivalent. The new function that's brand new is rank average. Now I'm going to use this one. And in this video, this is like for Professional Development Day. We're seeing new features in 2010. The #1 thing they changed in 2010 was all the statistical functions, like binom dist and norm dist and et cetera. And they really radically changed and put a lot of new functions to replace earlier functions. So you may see when you get to certain functions you use this. They don't want you to use that. They want you to use the new ones. But I'm going to use this one. The number, I want to say that 23, how does it, comma, rank with reference, and hit the F4 key. Oops, I hit the F5. F4. Since I did it wrong, incorrectly there, I have to do it twice. Comma, and then the order. And this is a huge improvement. A bunch of functions now used to have to go to help and figure out whether to put a 0 or a 1. And now they have these drop downs. So descending is what we want, so I put a 0. And I'm going to double click and send it down, and it ranks it. Just to show you off to the side, rank equivalent. I'm going to get this number, comma, all of these, F4, comma, 0. Right? So that'll give you the same thing. This is the function they want you to use. Now, why is it called equivalent? Same with this function. It does the same thing. Because if there's a tie, where's the tie? Do I have no ties? OK, so I'm going to have to make, oh, there it is. 57 and 57. If only I had conditional formatting for duplicates. Right? So they treat a tie as equivalent. 6, 6. There's no 7 in the list. The number it jumps up to is 8. Well, in some circumstances, that's not what you want, like in boomerang tournaments where you have to average the points to give them out, and other situations also. The number, comma, all of the numbers, you do the same as earlier functions, except for the dot average will just average the numbers. So we'll enter. And so instead of our 6, we're going to get 6.5. And it still doesn't jump to 7. It goes to 8. And I can see there's a tie for this low number here. So instead of both getting 3, they're going to get 3.5. Wow, that's a lot. This is a huge video. Be sure to use the little drop down at the bottom where it says Show More, and you can click on the time mark and jump to whatever part of the video you want. All right, see you next video.